Hey y'all, welcome to the Clock Tower. I'm Colton here with Brandon. Our first events from 2025 Springfest finally in. We've had 2 events so far this season to round out the month of May. This season's going to go all the way to September, so it's going to be a long summer of over 20 different events worldwide. So a lot of data to go through. We'll start in Long Beach. 65 teams at the season opening event. Top 4 teams: Hendrickson, Bunny Girl, Quints, Miku, which is the 8 pants. Second place was a RWBY choice standby list with another Bunny Girl and 8 standby Quints. Third place, Guilty Gear, Kai, Ram Lethal into Dorothy, Nikkei, and again, 8 salvage Bunny Girl. Fourth place, 8 salvage Quints, 8 standby Ruby, and your bog standard Bocchi the Rock list. So, in this top 4, a couple things immediately stand out. Thing number 1 is honestly the fact that there are 2 Rubies here.
Yeah.
We talked about Ruby in our season preview. We thought it was relevant, but still kind of fringe. It gets a pair of tops here on 2 different lists, too. It's not like there's one list that found some angle. This is choice standby and 8 standby. And they're both playing the Pyrrha, which is a thing that we didn't see as much in the singles season. Pyrrha seemed to be the less popular choice, but now it's working its way back.
Yeah, it's just splash. It's just a splash in. Like you basically have that as kind of like a decompression tool kind of thing, and it forces your opponents to have to play around it, with maybe not even necessarily having to play into it. It's more or less trying to keep your opponents in check, but also not taking away from the floor of the deck.
Yeah, if you're going to be playing more than 4 standby, you might as well be playing this anyway. And if you're playing 8 standby, it gives you a lot more flexibility with your game plan.
Yeah, other than that, I think it's interesting to see that there is 3 different Quints lists in the top 4. As we go through the rest of it, we'll see a fourth one come through.
Yeah, and we talked about this, right? We talked about how there are 5 different Quints lists that I think we actually said that all 5 Quints lists are probably going to top at some point during Springfest, and 4 of them have already accomplished that in the first weekend.
Yeah, and it just goes to show, I think the amount of card quality in that set is important here, I think, and you can have so many different looks from the same set too.
Also, 3 Bunny Girls in top 4, not shocking at all.
Yep.
We've talked about how high of a floor Bunny Girl has, and if a good player can consistently go X2 with a deck, that deck is going to make top 8 in trios a lot. You can debate whether or not it's going to win a singles format. We saw it didn't do as well in the top tables at Worlds, but it's extremely good in this format specifically. Not to say it's not good in singles. It's an X2 deck in singles kind of as a floor if you're a good player, right? It's a very good, very consistent list. But in trios, X2 is all you need to top. And in a 6-round environment, which is what trios usually is, 5 or 6 rounds depending on the tournament size, 4 and 2 or 5 and 1, which is a pretty reasonable threshold for a Bunny Girl list to reach consistently, you're going to see a lot of it in Top Cut. We've talked about it already. We're going to see it all season. Rounding out top 8, Standby Doggo, Nikkei, Watame, Maureen, Hololive, Hendrickson, 8-bar Grand Order with the Yotsuba. That one's the 8-bar Quints. And 8-bar Nikkei, so there's that bar top end. So an 8-bar tribal squad.
Yep.
One of these is not like the others. This 8-bar list is a trip. It is 12 different characters. It is almost entirely 4-ofs. It certainly is a deck. It's certainly a deck. Rounding out top 8, Chainsaw Man, 8-bar Dragon Maid, and Shauna. Three things that we thought would be relevant, but maybe not particularly present. But
Uh,
again,
who's this we, Colton? It's worth mentioning we did not talk about Dragon Maid in our tier list stuff.
that's fair. We did not talk about Dragon Maid in our tier list stuff. I talked about Dragon Maid in our tier list stuff. I mean, look, it's 8 bar. It's excruciatingly consistent. I've talked about it at length. We're not going to get into it here. But deck is still good. Just because people aren't playing a deck does not mean the deck is not good. And I think that that's like a long-standing problem with the way that we look at metas. If a deck is still good, but no one's playing it, it's still a tree falling in a forest. It would make a sound if anyone was there to hear it. Rounding out top 8, another 8 salvage, Quints in between a salvage pants slime list, first slime top of the season, and Sora. Sora's a spooky one, man. Like, if you don't have an answer for Sora, you've got big problems. A lot of things do have answers for Sora, but if you don't have an answer for Sora, and there will be more things in trios that don't have those answers than in singles, Sora's gonna get you. Sora can absolutely get you. So definitely something to at least pay some attention to as the season progresses. This is that format, though, right? This is the format that allows you to play the stuff that maybe the top decks have answers to, but a lot of stuff in the middle, maybe not quite as resilient to those unique game plans. So Sora much better positioned in this format than it would be in a singles format.
Also worth noting that this is our first entry of Slime for the season, is in that kind of last spot here in the top cut. We're kind of expecting to see lower counts of Slime, especially seeing a lot more Bunny Girl, a lot more Nikke coming in, but that Slime is still present here. Worth noting that there is no Overlord here in the top 8 here in the first round of tournaments.
Honestly, like it's weird to say this out loud, but it feels like Hololive and Slime are both strong decks that are maybe starting to get relegated to the realm of the true believers, which feels ridiculous because they're both so strong. But I think a lot of people are going to be on Bunny Girl, a lot of people are going to be on Nikke, and if those two slots are already filled, what's in the third lane? There's a lot of Quints to go around. There's a lot of Bocchi the Rock that people want to play. Hendrickson just won Worlds, right? So, despite being two of the best sets from a year ago, and I would argue Hololive in particular, still one of the best sets in the meta. A Hololive pile is still going to beat a whole lot of things, and is still, for my money, top 5 in this format. But it's interesting to see them getting less play. It also could be fatigue. Like, that's another thing that we have to take into account with Springfest is if you've been on Hololive or on Slime for a year and a half now, playing it at every competitive event, and it's finally taken a half step back in the meta due to bans and other releases, you might be going, finally, I get to play something else. Especially in a format where the stakes are much lower. So there's less incentive to play the very best thing in the room. So maybe that's a thing. I think that's very likely a thing, frankly. That's a factor that we need to consider when we think about the reasons people take things. Like, I'm not taking my best deck, and you're not taking your best deck, literally for similar reasons, right? Like, if I was taking my best deck, I'd be back on Gura, and you would be back on Slime. Literally, these two sets, and we're both playing something else in Springfest because we want to play something else. So there's a temptation to look and go, oh, is it losing its meta share? And it's like, I mean, maybe a little bit, but it's Springfest, you know? Spring is a completely, or Summerfest. Sorry, I'm going to call it Springfest. I'm going to St. Louis Rams this for the entire summer. I'm so sorry. But that's a thing, right? And we need to be cautious about thinking about meta share when we look at Summerfest, when we look at this trios format. because it's just not the factors in play as to who's taking what and why people are taking things fundamentally different from Springfest. Speaking of fundamentally different from Summerfest, uh, there were only 4 teams in Bologna, down from 25 teams in Milan 2 years ago. What? What happened here, Bushy Road? Why are there only 12 players in Italy? So they end up with a singles format because under a certain threshold of teams, the trios format becomes a singles format. Standby Doggo, Nikkei in first, 8 Salvage, uh, Bunny Girl in second, Freerin, 8 Pants on the trial deck top end in third, and a throwback, my very first trios list, Chica Yo, Love Live Sunshine in fourth place. Sunshine still occupies the nightmares of some OG players. And here it is with a Springfest top, Summerfest Trios top. And it's going to be on the graphic at the end of the year. That's amazing. I love it.
Monster. No, yeah, absolutely. Like, uh, it definitely is interesting to see such a drastic cut in player base there. I know there's a lot of different factors that go into why that was not as successful as some of those things have been in the years past. But I definitely it's interesting to see the singles format tournament kind of go through as well here because we're able to kind of see, okay, whereas with trios, some decks can get carried through, and it kind of it's the majority of the team has to be able to get things where they need to be. This is very much reliant on the single deck, the single opportunities that you have with these decks, and which one can have the higher floor to be able to get to where it needs to go. Seeing Nikkei come out on top, I think is important here.
And when you walk in the door expecting a trios environment, and then
Yeah.
the organizers come up to you and they go, "Hey, we've only got 12 players. It's going to be a singles event." Like, you picked your deck. Like, I don't know if you can really, I don't know at what point they tell you that it's going to be a singles event and maybe you can pick something different. I don't know. But I imagine that most of these people played whatever it was that they intended to play in a trios environment. So it's interesting to see a small snippet, 12 players, right? Extremely small sample size. We're talking about, 1/15th of the number of players that were in Long Beach. So even less to extrapolate from this, but I think it's interesting to see what happens in that, kind of small sample size. And we don't know what the other 8 players are on, right? We have no idea what these decks had to beat. Nikkei and Bunny Girl could have been the only 2 like top tier meta things in the entire room. So, maybe this is, the reemergence of Chica Yo. More likely is that there were a lot of other things in this room that you probably wouldn't take to a singles environment, but are fun to play in a trios environment. And that's why the top 4 kind of looks the way it does to some extent. Or maybe not. I don't know. Very little data to go off of. Everything is speculative. If you were in Italy, or if you maybe know why this regional was so much smaller than in years past, please leave a comment because we are thousands of miles away and have no idea. So, one more thing to note as we wrap up, there's going to be a JP stream in a couple of weeks on the 18th. They will announce product releases and bans in that stream. We're not going to cover it too closely, but if anything interesting pops up in there that could affect the English game, we will talk about it at that time. Until then, that's it for us. We're into Summerfest now, y'all. We've got a couple more tournaments: Mexico City, British Columbia, Munich, all coming up this upcoming weekend. We'll talk about those in 2 weeks, while something out next week as well. Until next time, thank you so much for joining us. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and have a good one.
We'll see you then.